Most people think building a smart home happens right at the end of construction. They imagine walking through a nearly finished house and simply pointing out where they want a touchscreen, a set of ceiling speakers, or a new voice assistant. That approach usually leads to living with a bank of 6 identical switches on the kitchen wall, where nobody knows what does what. It leaves you juggling between 4 to 7 different apps just to turn off the lights, lock the front door, and put on some music. Professional integration focuses on mapping the granular details of daily life months before a single product is selected. The entire physical foundation of the house, where the wires go, how the framing is built, when the concrete is poured, depends on uncovering the exact mechanics of an ordinary Tuesday. System architects begin by looking past hardware brands to ask a functional question. Who visits the property when the owners are away? A house that remains empty for a week can be protected by a standard alarm panel and wireless door sensors. However, a home serviced by housekeepers, dog walkers, and landscapers requires a different physical blueprint. Managing those visitors with individual codes and scheduled windows means routing power and network lines to every exterior door. This infrastructure must be finalized on the plans before the physical door hardware is even ordered. The same logic applies to the driveway. A standard camera will send a generic motion alert if a car pulls in at 2 a.m. Effective license plate recognition, which can identify a family member versus a stranger, demands far more specific hardware placement. These cameras require a narrow geometric window. They must be mounted 15 to 50 feet from the target, 3 to 6 feet off the ground, at a shallow angle. A general overview camera mounted on a high eave cannot reliably read a plate. Because of these rigid positioning constraints, the camera needs a dedicated, hardwired run in a location coordinated with the landscape design before any concrete is poured. Security functions as a hardwired utility, baked into the landscape and the foundation as a permanent extension of the home's infrastructure. Moving inside the living spaces, aesthetics create their own rigid timelines. When discussing window treatments, the most critical question is whether the motorized shade should be visible when it's fully retracted. Hiding the mechanism completely requires the builder to construct a recessed pocket inside the ceiling. The exact dimensions of that pocket depend on the thickness of the material and the size of the tube. Heavy blackout drapes require a significantly larger cavity than sheer fabrics. If a framing crew builds a generic pocket and the homeowner later selects a fabric roll that is half an inch too thick to fit, the only solution is to tear down the finished ceiling. Achieving the luxury of invisible technology requires finalizing fabric choices before the carpenters ever touch the wood. Once the physical structure is set, the focus turns to the operational brain of the house. The deciding factor here is how many different apps the owner is willing to manage daily. Consolidating lighting, shades, audio, and security into a single platform like Josh AI eliminates the friction of switching between multiple interfaces. Choosing a voice-first system within this unified platform immediately dictates the physical layout of the home. It determines exactly where microphones are placed, how they are wired, and how the budget is allocated for every room. The software platform that runs the home must be selected before a single wire is pulled through the studs, as it constrains every hardware choice that follows. This complex planning ultimately ensures resilience. If the internet connection drops, the core functions of the house, like the kitchen lights, must continue to work. Maintaining that reliability requires hardwiring keypads back to a central lighting panel and keeping local controls stable so the home never has to wait for a response from a distant cloud server. When the physical infrastructure is properly aligned, the house operates in the background. At dusk, the architectural lighting warms up while the motorized shades smoothly descend in quiet synchronization. Residents experience this effortless flow because the difficult structural questions were answered months earlier on the blueprints. Designing for these specific human behaviors creates a residence that functions with the same permanence and reliability as the plumbing or the walls.